and welcome to February's Sweet Sentiment class. I am Jamie and I am here to show you how to color these adorable unicorns. This class is going to focus on coloring hair, so we're going to get right down to it. These are the items that are in the kit for this month. So if you were lucky enough to swipe a kit for this month, you'll get this awesome jelly roll pin. And I will show you exactly how to use it. This is a glitter pin. And you'll notice on this little guy, see when I put him in the light, you can see the glitter. Pretty cool. Then you will get a special custom mix of sequins. Nice little rainbow of sequins with some stars in there. So you can use these for your cards. You will also get a memento dewdrop. These dewdrops are super cool because they're fun to take with you and stuff. They don't take up a ton of room. So you will either get a dewdrop in tuxedo black or in desert sand. I don't personally own the dewdrop in desert sand, so I'm going to show you what just what stamping in desert sand looks like. You're also getting this super incredible stamp set. Let me get it all in the frame here, from CC Designs. So you have the 3 little unicorns here. You have a bunch of fun little sayings that go with them. So tons of card making for you guys. Or you can stamp them. I probably have that upside down. You can stamp them in your planner or on your calendar or all kinds of stuff. They're super cute. We're going to try to be able to color all 3 of them so you can check out all the different hairstyles. And we're just going to do some fun stuff with these little guys. I think they're just adorable. I'm super excited to use these for this project. You're also, in your kit, going to get a sample of Catherine Pooler paper. This is the kind of paper that I use for coloring. So this is the Catherine Pooler. Let me see if I can get it under here for you. Nope, I sure can't. So I'll go like this. So this is the Catherine Pooler 8.5 by 11 cardstock. It's 100-pound cardstock, and you get 20 sheets in the pack. I always take my sheets and I cut them into quarters. So this is just a quarter sheet. So I'm going to show you what we do. I have my work surface here. This is just one of those awesome big desk calendars. So this is my work surface that I stamp on. I'm going to show you my mini Misty here. Let me zoom out a little bit. Show you my mini Misty here and how I stamp these. Once we stamp them, then we'll get to coloring, okay? So, first of all, I open my mini Misty here and I put in a piece of cardstock. So let me turn it this way so you can see it. I use my little magnets to secure that piece of cardstock. Then I open up my little unicorns. Now when you first open these and take them out of the package, a great hint for you is to use your fingers and kind of rub them a little bit while they're still connected to this plastic sheet. Your skin on these will kind of rough them up a little bit. They'll take off the chemicals and stuff, the glossy chemicals from manufacturing. You'll get a much cleaner stamped image if you do it this way. So just FYI, I always rub them up a little bit, just like a baseball player would do with his fresh baseball right out of the package. And I'm going to take all of these little guys and I'm going to place them on my piece of cardstock here. And I plan on fussy cutting these out, so I'm just going to stick them kind of willy-nilly on here and pop them down, okay? Now I close my Misty, put a little bit of pressure on it so that I can pick up those little stamps. Let me move these little guys so I don't hurt them, so I can pick up the little stamps. I'm going to start with the desert sand so you guys can see what the desert sand looks like, and I'm just going to ink them up really good. You can hear me inking them up, I'm sure. I'm going to ink up these little guys. The great thing about the Misty is that it keeps your paper in place. I'm just going to put nice even pressure on them. The MISTI keeps your paper in place, so if you need to stamp them again, you will be able to stamp them again. But one nice clean stamped image. Check that out. So fun. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this piece of paper, and then I'm going to stamp them again in black so you can see what the black looks like. And I'm just going to make sure that they fit here. Yep, got my paper all lined up. So I'm going to use my little dewdrop to show you guys, and I'm just going to ink them up. Now obviously if you stamp in Desert Sand first, it's a much lighter ink, so you don't have to wash your stamps in between. But if you stamp with the black first, the Tuxedo Black, it's a much darker ink, so obviously you would have to wash your stamp in between, otherwise you'll get that dark pigment showing through. A lot of people will stamp in Desert Sand just for the purpose of coloring with no lines. So if you happen to get a Desert Sand, that's what it's for. It's for no lines coloring. And you can see I'm pretty thorough on my inking. I like to ink them up a lot. And same thing, we're just going to put some nice even pressure on them. And I'm not putting an overt amount of pressure on it. I'm not like white knuckling this, but I'm just making a nice even amount of pressure. And there we go, nice clean stamped image. So now I'm going to take my stamp chamois. I know it looks all gross and yucky, and I'm just going to wash these off real quick because I like to take good care of my stamps. There we go, all clean. And now we're ready to color. Are you ready to color? Because I'm ready to color. Let's do this. All right, so I'm going to color in black just because I know that it's easier for you to see on the camera. And I'm going to try to stay right here in frame so that you guys can see. Perfect. All right, so here we go. So now we're going to start by coloring the body of this little guy. So I want to color the body. I'm going to use different blends of markers so you guys can see how to color the body with different blends of markers. So this first blend I'm going to use is C0, C1, and C3. And I always use my colorless blender along with those. Okay, so I'm going to go in with the shadow, and I'm going to start by shadowing in all of the things that I think are going to be in shadow. So I'm going to start down here at his little tail. And also, as I usually do, I'm going to take, where can I put the cap that you can see it? I'll put the cap right here. I'm going to take both ends off of, both caps off of my marker. The reason I do this is because it will equalize the pressure within, the air pressure within the barrel of the marker. So it helps you get a nice even flow of ink, and it prevents those big blobs. So just in case your marker is overfilled. Now I'm not going to completely trace this. I want to just go in where I think the deepest shadows are going to be. We want to add depth and dimension, and if we were just to completely trace this, it wouldn't really add a whole lot of depth. So I'm going to go into where I think the darkest parts would be and just add a little bit of line. Okay, so I know back here his hair, and feel free to always rotate your picture. The more you rotate, usually the better things turn out, mainly because you're coloring where your wrist angle is comfortable, and that's what we want. We don't want to, you know, be trying to color all funky weird. That makes it really hard to color. So I know that this back part of his leg is going to be furthest away from the sun, so I'm just going to add a little bit of shadow. I'm thinking that the sun is coming like from this direction, so that's why we're adding little bits of shadow in here. And remember, this marker is quite dark, especially since we're coloring white. So we're going to be kind of careful here, and we're just going to add where we think the shadows are most predominant. And if you think the shadows go in a different place than me, that is absolutely fine. You are more than welcome to add the shadows wherever you think they're going to be. I have said many, many times, I'm not the Copic police. I'm not the shadow police. I'm not here to have you just, exactly robot what I'm doing. If you find it more appealing to put the shadows in a different place, then by all means, put the shadows in a different place. I have just come to like shadows in certain placements, so that's what I'm doing with them. I try to think about where the sun's gonna hit and all of that good stuff on his little ear here. Okay. Now, I know that his nose is in front of his face, so I'm going to put a little shadow here because I know that his nose would cast a shadow back on his face. So, we're going to put a little shadow here. And then I'm thinking the underside of his nose here is going to be a little bit darker and in shadow more so than the top of his nose. And then I like to put a shadow kind of around the back side of his eye because I know his eyes are kind of sunken into his face as opposed to popping out of his face. So that's what we're gonna do there. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of difference in this, but you'll see as we move along that you're gonna add a lot of depth and dimension to this. So now we're moving on to C1. And again, I'm taking both caps off, and it doesn't matter where you start. You can start where you left off, or you can go back to the beginning, or wherever you're most comfortable. But we're just going to use this to kind of extend that shadow out just a little bit further, and we're going to kind of smooth things out just a bit. And again, I'm going around his eyes just a little bit, this side that's going to be furthest away from the sun, and underneath here just a tad. Following that first shadow all the way around. Wherever you laid in that first shadow, that's where you're going to put in this second color. And these are the C markers that I'm using right now. C is for a cool gray. So you'll notice it's kind of got a tiny bit of like a blue tinge to it. It's a steely, cool colored gray. You'll notice when I do the W's that it's very much warmer. It's kind of like got a brown base to it. So you'll see the difference in them when they're side by side. It's hard to tell when they're separated, but when they're side by side, you can totally see the difference. And that's why I'm going to use different colors so that you guys can see what the difference is. And then you'll get to a point where you prefer to use C's for one type of thing and W's for another, and, things that are warmer and cooler and that sort of thing. I know it sounds awfully persnippety, but that's how it goes. Copics are kind of like children. You start getting where you have favorite ones, and even though you pretend that none of them are your favorite, we all know how it is. This is C0, so we're doing the same thing. I guess I can only say that because I only have one child, but that's just how it works. I'm the baby of 4, so my parents like to say that they didn't choose favorites, but we all know. We know how it works. And this one, I kind of am going around the whole thing, just sort of tracing the outline and then smoothing the transitions between these other 2 markers. You notice I'm moving kind of fast with this. really because I don't have to be super careful with it. Because his body's gonna be white, I'm gonna go back in with my colorless blender and we're gonna smooth all this out. So I'm not being too crazy with it, but at the same time, I'm also not being all that careful with it either. And I'm just tracing the parts that I want to be slightly darker. Going around his little eye, making these nice and smooth transitions. Now I know this is probably hard to see on camera because it is such a light color. I'm going to smooth this out a little bit more. But it definitely is going to add dimension to your little unicorn as opposed to him just having a white body. So now I have my colorless blender. And my colorless blender, I'm going to go in and I'm going to kind of push this color back up to where I want it to be. Okay? So that with the colorless blender, I always kind of push the color back into itself. It's not necessarily a blender so much as it is almost an eraser, but you use it to push that color into place. And this adds a lot of texture as well because it's adding, it's saturating the paper. That's my word. So since it's saturating the paper, it's adding some texture as well. So I like that little bit of fuzzy texture. And you notice I'm always turning my paper so that I can push this marker back into its darkest spot. So no matter which way I'm working, I'm pushing that color back. That's the way this colorless blender works. And those of you who were quick enough to nab the kit from the January class got a colorless blender in your kit. So now's a great time to put that to use. So I don't want to push the color all the way back to that black line, but I certainly want to push it a little bit out so that we have a nice even skin tone for this little guy. All right, so that's our first little unicorn guy, and that's pretty much how you color white, no matter which way you do it. If you're coloring a pillow or something like that, definitely that's a great way to color white. So just a little into the shadow and use that colorless blender makes a great white for you guys. All right, so we're gonna work on coloring his hair. Are you ready for this? All right, so I want to utilize the markers that we used last time in our class and add a few more to your collection, because that's what it's all about, right? We're gonna add a couple of more. So we're gonna make this guy a little bit rainbow colored. I think we're gonna kind of use this guy as a guide, and we're gonna make this one a little bit more rainbow colored. So let's go for it. I'm gonna go a little bit different this time, and I'm gonna start with pink. So he's gonna be pink up here. So I'm gonna use my RV69. And this is a very, very, very dark, dark red color. The reason I like this for the shadow of pink is because it adds so much richness and tone to whatever you're going to fade that pink out into. So I'm gonna use the very, very tip of this marker. And I want to go along his horn because I know that that's gonna leave a shadow. And I just kind of want to use it like a paintbrush. And I want to use these tiny, tiny little paint strokes to add some hair. And guys and gals, I know that getting little teeny tiny strokes is something that comes with practice. My strokes used to be like super fat. It looked like I was coloring with a Crayola marker. And in all honesty, it's just time and familiarity with your markers. So the longer you spend trying to create these little paint strokes, the better you're going to get at it. So don't be frustrated if you're trying this for the first time and you're trying to get these little strokes and they're just not coming for you. It's time and practice. The only reason that I can make my paint strokes smaller than yours is because I've spent more time with my markers, okay? So really, really, really don't feel bad if you can't get super tiny strokes to start with, just more practice. Some people are better able to make these paint strokes towards them, like this. Some people are better able to make them away from them. I kind of do both. It just really depends on where I'm at, what I'm coloring, that sort of dictates which direction I go with these little strokes. But definitely, you're just, really what it's looking like is you're putting pressure here and then pulling it out. Putting pressure here and then pulling it out. And this is what you make with your little paint stroke. So when I first started, it was like this. And now that I can better do it, I have these little tiny hairs and little thin hairs. And some of them are thicker and some of them are thinner, and that's okay, because that is how we color. I mean, that's how hair is. Some are thicker, some are thinner. So we're just gonna take our time. I love doing hair. I really do. I think it's fun. You can find a lot of dimension in hair, and you can definitely play a lot with hair and do so many different things. So I really, really enjoy coloring hair. And to watch it develop and come out is like really, really cool. I think anyways. All right, so RV66. And again, so I just went in here where I thought the shadows were gonna be. Around his ear and around his horn and all that good stuff. Now what I'm doing is I'm going back over where I put that RV69 and I'm just elongating those strokes. I'm taking this stroke and I'm making it longer and lighter. And so I'm adding little strokes around it, just like this. So not necessarily right on top of it, but beside it and around it, so that we can add more dimension and create this illusion of flowing hair on this sweet little unicorn. Aren't these little Roberto's Rascals unicorns the cutest? I just love them. I'm not like a crazy huge unicorn fan. Shh, don't tell my friends. But these guys are just so stinking cute. I can't help it. The biggest thing I'm going to tell you guys about hair, really, in all honesty, the most important thing is to go with the flow of the hair. So the artist drawn lines, you notice that I'm like curving my little paint strokes to go around with the way that the hair would fall. That's what your eye is going to see. Your eye's really gonna fall on these artist drawn lines and see which direction the hair is flowing. That's what you wanna go along with. That's super duper important. So try to stick with these artist drawn lines and try to do your little paint strokes just the way the artist has drawn those lines. Now I'm going to go into RV17. And again, we're just gonna do the same thing. We're gonna pull these out just a little bit further. This is a brighter color, so it's gonna add some brightness and volume to this hair. Not really volume, but not volume as in like curly. Volume as in like bright color. It's gonna have some loud pink hair. How about that? We like crazy loud pink hair. So see how I'm curling these around so that it goes with the flow of his hair? That's what we're looking for. I keep on saying his. I guess this unicorn is a boy. I don't know. Do unicorns have gender? All these things we're forced to think about. There we go. RV55. start filling in these light spots. This is where the sun would hit. And if you're using a 3 marker blend, then obviously these blends are just going to be, you know, slightly different. You will be filling in this spot with your lightest colored marker. And you can always, when you're doing a 3 marker blend, kind of fudge it a little bit and leave some white space, just like I did there, as like an extreme highlight, like where the sun is really hitting the hair right there. All right. Oops, my cap's over here. And then my lightest color is RV52. RV52, come in here. I'm just kind of filling in. I'm trying not to really wash out the other colors, but going in here and filling these in. Don't want to use too much ink because all that work that you just did will wash away on making these little tiny brush strokes. All right, so now you notice how I left the bottom of his hair. We're gonna make the bottom of his hair a purple color. So we're gonna go into our purple blend. The darkest color in my purple blend is BV08. And this marker of mine happens to be really juicy. So I'm making sure to take both caps off, and I'm gonna come in here into these shadows. I'm gonna add shadow. And I'm really taking time to try to focus on making this hair look like it's curling around. And then this part's gonna be in shadow too. And this is gonna be a shadow back here. Okay. Go really sparingly on this BV08 on this this particular instance because you don't want those shadows overtly pronounced because it's at the bottom of his hair where it's going to tend to be getting lighter anyways. We're gonna end up blending these two colors together, this purple and this pink. Now I'm gonna add this FV02. The FV is fluorescent violet, so this doesn't really belong to a color family per se, but I love how bright it makes things because of that fluorescence in there. So I love to add it to my purple blends because Copic doesn't really have a bunch of great purple blends. They're kind of hard to come by. So this tends to be one of my favorite ones, adding this FV02 or FV2. Just really adds some brightness to that purple. And then I'm gonna go with B66 and I'm just gonna add a few little hairs in there. This this B66 is like a purplish blue color, and I really like the depth it adds to my purple blends, even though it is still a tad dark. Okay. And then I'm gonna go with this B63. And with this B63, yes, I'm gonna kind of fill in here. It's a much lighter color. It kind of stair steps quite a bit. And I'm gonna go up into this pink some so that I can blend these two colors together. So I want it to look like one cohesive thing. So I went up into that pink a little bit. Now it looks a little muddy, so what I'm going to do is I'm gonna come back with my RV55 and I'm gonna add a few brush strokes back down into this purple So again, it looks cohesive. And then I start getting all nitpicky about the hair. There we go. And I just kind of go back over a little bit and add where things kind of washed out a little bit. I like to add a few of those real thin hairs back in, just because I don't want them all to wash out. I want it to be nice and textured. And I'm gonna add that RV52, and we're gonna go back down into this purple a little bit and make it like a purpley pink. Just a couple of brush strokes, nothing too major, but just a couple of little strokes here, because I want it to be a little bit pinky. A little bit pinky. There we go. Okay, so that double colored hair, not so crazy, right? It's not super duper hard. Okay, so now we're gonna move into our other colors. We're gonna start on this crazy long tail. Okay, so I'm going to start with my blues. You guys remember last class we had the blues from the jeans, the B99, 97, 95, 93, and 91. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to choose, let me show you, I'm going to choose every other one. So I'm going to do 99, 95, and 91. So I'm gonna make a 3-color blend. Reason being is there's not a ton of room in this tail, and I wanna use 3 colors for the tail. So I'm gonna use blue and teal and yellow all for the tail. So I want to make sure that I'm not over saturating. So I'm gonna use this 99 as my shadow, this 95 as my midtone, and this 91 as my highlight, okay? And that's what I mean by choosing every other marker when I tell you about choosing every other marker. So this will be your 3-marker blend. So I'm gonna start right here at his tail. And we're gonna come out of his little bum here. Cheeky. And we're just gonna add these little brush strokes right in here where the shadow would be. And I think there'd be a shadow there. We're gonna go with it. All right, so see, I didn't add very much, just a little bit. A little bit goes a long way with this one. Now I'm gonna go with my B95. And we're just gonna add a bit more. Awesome. And then into that B91. And this is going to be really, really light colored, but I also think that this is going to be probably the lightest part of his tail as well. So I'm going to make this quite light, and I'm not going to worry about going too far down because my next color is going to be a teal, and that teal color is going to be darker than this. So I actually kind of want to go a little bit further in because I want to make sure that I can blend them together. Okay, so he has that pretty blue tail. So now I'm going to pull out my teal markers. My teal markers, I'm using BG49, BG45, and BG53. So this is a duck blue. This is a really dark teal color, so I'm going to reserve it just for the shadows. This Nile blue is a pretty medium teal color, and then this ice mint is going to mix really nicely with this light blue. So I'm going to start with our darkest, as usual, and BG49, I'm going to go down here into where this shadow is that I already laid the shadow in with the B99, and I'm just going to kind of elongate that shadow. And then I'm going to go up from this section because this part of his hair I know is kind of behind this part. Then I know that this part down here is going to be yellow, but I see that this is going to be a shadow. So I'm going to add a little bit of shadow here because these teals mix really well with yellow. So I'm just going to add this little bit of shadow here. So like I said, really sparingly, oops, sorry, as I shake you crazy, really sparingly with this dark teal, but I'm definitely adding some of this teal to make that kind of rainbow colored feel to his tail. Okay. Now I'm gonna go into this BG45. And again, I'm just using, you know, as much as I can get to the very, very tip. And you notice that sometimes I miss the paper entirely. It's because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get just the lightest touch onto this paper. And again, I'm going with the flow of the hair down into this tail. And we're gonna go back up. I need to turn it. We're gonna go back up here because I want this part to be a little bit dark so I can use that lightest color to hit into that highlight. Okay. And again, see how I'm curling this around to try to make it go with the flow of the tail. I feel like this part's gonna be kind of in highlight as well, because if the sun's coming from this direction, this is kind of bent towards where the sun is. So that's why I'm making it that way. There you go. Just trying to play tricks on the eyes so that it looks more dimensional than it is. I mean, obviously it's a two-dimensional piece of paper. Oops, and I'm sorry, I'm with BG53. It's a two-dimensional piece of paper, so we're trying to play tricks on the eye and make the eye think that this has 3 dimensions to it, even though we know it does not. Okay, and I'm gonna come this way so that I can mix these blues together. I'm gonna make this teal come up into that blue because I want it again to be kind of a cohesive blend. So it looks like it's fading into one another. All right, now we're gonna move on to this yellow. I love yellow blends because they are so bright and fun and cheery. So I have this awesome yellow blend of Y38, Y18, and Y04. This is an uber bright, like highlighter yellow type blend. So we're gonna go for it. Y38 is first up. And again, even though this is a super bright color, this is the shadow color. So we're gonna come into this shadow area and we're gonna leave some of these shadows here. And really there's not going to be a ton of shadow. There's gonna be enough to show that color. We're gonna use this color for his horn too, so. Okay, now we're into Y18. And again, just a couple little brush strokes ought to do it. And then I'm gonna turn my paper so that I can make these brush strokes curve around with the way his tail is going. All right, then I'm gonna take this Y04, and this might actually surprise you, but I'm gonna go up into this tail quite a bit with this Y04, all the way down, all the way into here. Reason being is these teals and these yellows actually mix quite well, and so it'll add a little bit more dimension into an extra color that we didn't really even plan on having, but it sort of makes this tail really look like it blends together well. Really look like it's one color fading into another. All right, there's our little guy's tail. Oh, isn't he adorable? I just love him. All right, and I feel also like this color, this teal color ends abruptly, so I'm gonna take that BG53 and I'm gonna come back into here and I'm just gonna add a couple little swirls down here. then back. See, I told you I'm super picky, Y04, about the tail. I just love doing hair, so I'm always like, I don't know, it's just fun for me. All right, so we have that done, right? Hooray! Here we go. So with his mouth being super small, I'm not gonna worry too much. I'm gonna take this RV66 and I'm gonna add it in to this very darkest part of his mouth. I know this is the same color we used for his hair, but since this mouth is so tiny, I'm not gonna worry too much about making it like a correct color. And I'm gonna use the RV55 for his little tongue. Reason being, this is a lighter color, so it brings that tongue forward. Then I'm gonna use the RV52 on what the highlight of his tongue would be. So we're just gonna wash that out just a little bit on the top of his tongue. There we go. Now, I think I'm also gonna make his ears this pink color. So I'm gonna use this RV52 and I'm gonna go up into his ears a little bit. Actually, pretty much all the way. And then, if I go up into his ears like that, then I'm gonna use my colorless blender again. Told you guys, this is my favorite tool. And I'm gonna go into the center of his ear and kind of wash that out just a little bit so it feels like it's a different color than what's in his hair, even though it's not. There you go. All right. So now, I think that we're gonna color his horn and his hooves. And I think that he's gonna have this golden horn and these golden little hooves. So I'm gonna start with my Y38 again. With my Y38, I'm going to use this to kind of shadow this horn. So I know that this is the farthest away from the sun, and each one of these is going to shadow the next one. So this one's gonna shadow on this one, and this one's gonna shadow on this one, and same for that, and same for that. This is how we create some dimension here. Okay, I'm also going to go down to his hooves, and I'm gonna add shadow around where the hair would come down, and I'm gonna add shadow to what's furthest away from the sun. And he doesn't have like super big hooves, so this isn't going to be too overly difficult there. Okay, then with Y18, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go into these hooves and start blending that color towards the light source. And ever so slightly, just blend this color. Just a tiny bit. Okay? So you can see I didn't do a ton with that, but I did just a little bit to make the transitions of the colors evident. So Y04, we're gonna go back into these hooves, and we're gonna use this to add where the sunshine would be. This is our highlight. Okay? And then we're gonna use this to add right where the sunshine would shine on this little unicorn horn. And we're gonna pull those colors back in over themselves so it adds a little bit of dimension. Perfect. Just like that. Now, I love teals, so I think I'm gonna make his eyes a beautiful teal color. So we're just gonna go back to our teal blend. And as you see, this is a ton of just like, oh, this is what I feel today. So if you want to make the eyes purple or pink or whatever, make the eyes purple or pink or whatever. It's really totally up to you. So I'm going to go from the darkest color, and I'm just going to add a tiny bit to the shadow where his actual eye socket is adding shadow around his eyeballs here. Just a tiny bit to that dark. You don't want too much shadow in his eyes. Okay, then into that BG45, and I'm very careful to take both caps off of my pen on this because, oh my gosh, after all this coloring, if I get like a big splotch right on his eyes, oh, I'm gonna be so sad. Right? Wouldn't you be sad if you got like a super big splotch right now? I hope I'm not jinxing anybody. Certainly don't want that to happen. All right, so we have that. And now I'm going into this BG53. And we're gonna go into the highlight of his eyes and just kind of close that together. Awesome. Now, again, going back to my favorite tool, this colorless blender. And I'm gonna go in just here where this highlight would be, and I'm gonna kind of wash it out a little bit. And again, I always do it towards the darker part. And this is just gonna add a little bit of dimension to that spot. Okay? All right. Now, you know guys, how I always talk about this multi-liner, my Copic multi-liner. This is the 0.03, and I really, really like this super fine tip that's on it. If you need to use a thicker one, by all means use a thicker one. But this is just a multi-liner. And I'm gonna go into his dark pupils of his eyes. And I'm going to outline this because I want this to really be super dark. And I'm gonna fill this part in. I'm gonna color it because I want that black to be nice and vibrant. See how it makes such a difference? I think it makes such a difference anyways. This is a completely optional step. If you don't have a multi-liner or you don't want to do this, you do not have to at all. And then I go around his eyes. Just because I like the eyes to pop. So I make these little artist drawn lines around the eyes. I just kind of go over them with my multi-liner a bit and make them really pop. All right, there's our special little unicorn. Isn't he adorable? I just love him. Let me pull him up here a little bit closer so you can see. Look at that. He is just too cute. Love him. Okay, so now, since we have this done, we're gonna take our Jelly Roll pen and I'm gonna show you how to use this bad boy. This thing is going to add so much to your little unicorn. So we're gonna take the cap off, and I kind of use my paper as kind of scratch paper to get that jelly roll going, okay? So I just do a little scribble to make sure I have the pigment down here. It's not really pigment, it's glitter, okay? And then I'm gonna use this in little brush strokes, just like I was with my Copic Barker. And I'm gonna use this to make brush strokes in the hair. And I'm just gonna go back and forth and make little brush strokes all the way through his hair. And same thing, I'm gonna make sure that I go with the grain of the hair, with the direction that his hair is flowing, because he has such flowing, beautiful, lovely locks. And I don't want to color all of it in. I don't want to just, glitter the whole thing, because then that takes away from all the work that you just did with getting that hair done. So I'm just going to go with the grain of hair and make sure that I'm leaving space in between. Look at that. Isn't that so cute? I'm also going to go kind of trace over the lines on his horn. I don't want his whole horn to be sparkly, but I certainly think that unicorn horns are sparkly. So I'm going to just kind of trace over the black lines to add a little sparkle to his unicorn horn there. And now you can see, if I move him around in the light, you can see that glitter. Isn't that cute? It just adds that little bit of sparkle and that little bit of magic to your little unicorn. Love it. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're gonna move on to another unicorn. So I think we're gonna do this guy. So I'm gonna color this guy, and like I told you before, I'm gonna use the W's. so you can see the difference between the cool grays and the warm grays. We're gonna go through this guy just a little bit faster because we're going to do him kind of a single color hair so that you can see what it looks like. So we're gonna color this guy with no lines, and I'm gonna start with my W3. The reason being is I want you guys to see the difference between coloring with the black lines and coloring with the no lines, just in case you did get this desert sand ink pad with your kit. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to treat this much like I would treat it with black lines, but instead of going beside the black line, or in this case obviously the no line, I'm going to color over the top of it. So you'll see that I'm just going to add, oh, I think my W3 is going dry, dry, dry. I'm just going to add shadow where I think that the shadows are going to be. So again, up onto his ear. Again, we're not going to outline this in any way because that takes away from the whole no lines point of it. But we are going to make the eye think that this is like almost like a photograph. We want it to not see the black lines. So the whole point of doing no lines is not just to trace the image, but to add depth and dimension to a two-dimensional object. So you can see I'm leaving spots on him that I'm not coloring. And you'll see why once we finish him up. I love coloring with no lines, guys. And really, it's not as scary as you think. The first couple of times you do it, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid. And then once you get the hang of it, you'll go, oh wait, that's really not so hard. No lines coloring to me is kind of my go-to and sort of my natural coloring now. I really enjoy doing the no lines coloring. I just love it. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's so much fun for me. You just get that wow factor, I think. Especially if you color no lines and you color quite bold. I tend to color in bold colors. I choose darker, bolder colors. So if you notice, I'm just shadowing everything that is going to be furthest away from the sun. I'm also not really shadowing his hooves yet because I'm going to color those in black. So they're going to be a little bit darker. But anything that's going to have a shadow is getting colored right now. Or anything that's going to be in shadow is getting colored right now. Here we go. All right. So now I'm going to shadow around his eye, okay, because we want his eye to pop out. We're going to shadow a little bit down here around his mouth, because we know that that's going to leave a little shadow there. And then his neck down here is going to be in shadow. His chin will shadow his neck. Okay, and then his little nose. His little nostril is going to be in shadow, obviously, because that's sunken in. There we go. All right. So that's a lot of shadows, okay? But you see, he's not exactly outlined. We've got lots of places left in highlight. That's what we're going for. So now we're going to go in with that W1. W1, and we're going to do kind of the same thing. I mean, we're really going to do the same thing we normally do. I'm just going to work on elongating these shadows and smoothing them out. And like I said, it's really no different than coloring with black lines. You're just using those lines as a guide, and you're coloring on top of them instead of coloring beside them. So you can see I'm pretty much going over everything. That I just did. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to pause so long in there. I was concentrating really hard on coloring. So I'm just trying to make sure these lines kind of blend out smoothly. And I'm just blending around his eyebrow there. And I'm trying to make sure that everything blends nice and smooth. It is hard to do white and in no lines. It's hard to do white anyways, but doing white and no lines is a little bit more difficult. So if you don't get this on the first go, don't worry too much about it. But I am definitely taking this, this second marker because that's what his true skin color kind of is. And I'm pretty much tracing the whole thing around. I know that's not exactly proper and that's not exactly how everybody else does it, but we all know that I'm a little bit different, right? I think it's been well established that I'm slightly different. We're gonna go with different as the word instead of weird, but I'll take either one. I don't mind being weird. It's what makes me unique. And again, I'm just going, you know, like where my wrist is comfortable, and I'm pretty much just tracing all of these lines because I want to make it look like it's round. I mean, a horse's legs are round, right? So this part's going to be shadowy, and then the part closest to the sun, or the part that's out here, the part that's rounded up, is going to be less shadowy. I'm just going for nice smooth shadows here. Just following these lines, making them so they're not so harsh, not like perfectly harsh straight lines. We're kind of washing them out a little bit and making them so that they're nice and smooth so that we can transition them into the lighter colors. Okay. And you notice I do rotate my paper a lot. It's really important, and that's why I've said it quite a number of times, is it is so important to color where your hand is most comfortable. We don't want to cause any extra arthritis or anything here for anyone, right? All right. So look at that. Oh, and I forgot around his little snout here. There we go. Okay. So yes, when you're coloring white with no lines, you're still gonna kind of see the lines a little bit, and that's okay. That's why we're coloring this guy in W's, because the W's are a warm color, and so is that desert sand. So we're gonna go into this W0, and we're essentially doing the same thing that we did with those C's. We're just going to smooth these lines out and elongate them out into that white part. I'm gonna go around his eyes now, into his snout here. And again, I'm kind of using this marker as well to sort of push that color where I want it to be, push that previous color where I want it to be. That's what's gonna help my eye think that these colors are blended and mixed. So they don't necessarily mix, it's that they layer on top of one another. And those layers are what makes those colors marry together. So we're looking to layer these colors. There we go. Gonna make these nice, smooth blends. All right. I love that coloring white actually goes fairly fast. And I love the differences between coloring with the W's and coloring with the C's. I think they really show a difference. And I'll put them side by side so that you can see them. All right, so there's our little guy. Notice he has quite the highlight in his skin. That's where this where this colorless blender comes in. Like I said, we're going to use it the same way. We're going to push this color out into itself, and that's what we're going to make this seem like it's highlighted, or like it's blended, I'm sorry. Apparently I need more coffee. Where's my coffee delivery? This will blend itself out with the use of this colorless blender marker. And you just want to go into these extreme highlights and push those other markers out of that extreme highlight so that it remains white and doesn't have that W marker in there. There we go. Now we have that W. And I promise you he's going to look better once we get the rest of him colored in, okay? I know that you can see the lines right now and it looks a little bit wonky and stuff, but I promise you he's gonna look awesome once we get him all colored in, okay? All right, so first things first, we're gonna go for this crazy hair of his. Do you see this wild and crazy hair? I do, I love it. So I'm going to go with teal because I think teal goes really well with these warm gray colors. So I'm going to go BG49 as my first color. And we're just going to do this 3 marker blend and we're going to use it for his entire mane and tail, okay? So I'm going to use this BG49 and I'm going to go where I think the shadows are again. So I know that his horn is going to leave a little bit of shadow here. And I'm just going to go with real light strokes. And I know that what's coming out of his head is going to be darker. We all have dark roots, right? Of course, my hair's turning into all glitter at this point, so I don't know about the dark roots anymore. I used to have dark roots. Does that count? And I know that his ear is going to cast a little bit of a shadow. Even though the sun's coming from this direction, I'm still going to add a little bit of shadow around his ear. Just again to play a trick on your eye for a little bit of depth and dimension. I'm going to turn this back around. I'm going to go back here behind his ear because I know that this ear is going to leave a bunch of shadow on everything. And again, if you're not getting these super fine little brush strokes, don't worry about it. It's going to come with time and practice. The more you color, the better you're going to be at getting these fine little brush strokes, okay? So please, please, please do not feel discouraged if you can't get as fine of brush strokes as me. It's just time and practice. Awesome. You know, the best thing about doing no lines is that the hair is so much more forgiving with no lines. If you don't go exactly with the artist drawn lines, it's not quite so evident with the no lines technique because you're coloring over all of these darker lines or all of these lighter lines. And with the black, the lines are darker, so you can always see where the artist drawn lines are. All right, so now let's see. I feel like this is going to be in shadow. We're gonna go along this way. And I know that this little curl back here is gonna be in shadow. Curl it up this way. Awesome. This piece is underneath that piece, so it's going to have a little bit of a shadow to it. I'm just adding shadows where I think there would be. I know this is going to be the farthest away from the sun, so I know it's going to be darker. And since I'm only using a 3 marker blend, that's kind of why I'm making the rest of this considerably darker than what I would if I was using a 5 marker blend. Awesome. There we go. Okay. So I like to work in sections, so I'm going to do his mane first and his tail second. So I'm going to use this BG45, and we're going to go back in. We're going to start blending this out. Okay. So again, I'm going to start up here. And I'm just going to start blending this out further and further and further. Blending, adding all these little strokes of hair. And you can see that, you know, with a lot of practice, where you can get with this, because it is quite repetitive. I find it really soothing. I love coloring hair because I feel like I don't have to think a ton about it. I think about where I put the shadows, obviously, but then after that, I can just kind of keep going and going and going. I love watching it develop. I think it's really neat to see when it comes together. And you see I hold the marker fairly close to the nib. I feel like it gives me a lot of control when I'm doing these little brush strokes. If I hold it closer to the nib, I get lots more control. There we go. Now I'm going to this BG53, and we're going to finish coloring over wherever these lines are that are from the memento. And you'll notice when I color hair with 3 markers, I tend to leave a little white spots in between. It just sort of lets that hair breathe, and it gives the illusion of the sun hitting it and more of a highlight there. So I do leave, when I do a 3 marker blend, I do tend to leave a lot more white in it than I would if I didn't use a 3 marker blend, if I used a 5 or 7. So there's his mane. Look at that. Cute little dude. Love these stamps. I can't say it enough. I just adore them. So I'm going back to my BG49. And we're going to work on his tail. So again, I know that his mane is in front of his tail by the way that the artist has drawn this. So I'm going to start by coming out of his little bum here. And we're going to put some brush strokes right here. And I know that all of this down here is going to be in shadow. So I'm just going to leave these brush strokes out here. Just like that. And then I'm going to go down this way because I see the shadow here. And I see the turn of his tail here. So we're going to kind of go down this way first. And see how I'm trying to stick with the artist drawn lines here and the direction his tail is going. It's going to give me a lot more dimension. There we go. And where this tail overlaps, I'm going to add some shadow. Not a lot, but just a little to add a little bit of dimension here. I want it to feel like there's lots of dimension in this because we're only using 3 markers. So again, we're going to do that same thing here. And since his mane is in front of his tail, we're going to start going out from his mane a little bit in the direction his tail would be flowing. And that's going to be the hard part, because we know that his tail's going to start flowing this way. So we got to think about coming out from the mane from this way to follow his tail around. So I'm going to bring all this way. But we definitely want that separation between his mane and tail. So we need that shadow to be there. There we go. All right, now we're gonna go back to this BG45 and we're just gonna go over our lines again. I'm gonna make this kind of straighter, and we're just gonna use the very tip of our marker. We're gonna follow our lines around. I love the sound of the marker on the paper. I don't know why, but it's just a very soothing sound to me. It makes me happy. It makes me happy like coffee makes me happy. I'm gonna try to make these look like they're flowing together. We're gonna go around here. And like I said, it's gonna take a while to get this down. Hair doesn't come overnight. Hair is something that you will continually work on and you will always strive to be better on. Sometimes to this day, I do hair and I go, ooh, gosh, what was I doing there? And then sometimes I do it and I'm like, heck yeah, I totally nailed that. So you just have to be patient with yourself. You're gonna throw things in the trash bin. It's going to happen. It's okay. Like I said, there's no Copic police out there. There's no hair police. I'm not gonna come at you and say, man, you really ruined that. So really just experiment. Find things that have, you know, really cool hair and start coloring it. Start picking it apart and thinking, okay, which direction would this hair be flowing? And look at photographs of people and think, okay, you know, her hair is flowing this way and this is where the highlight is, so I'm going to mimic that in my coloring. Just think about those things and you'll look at all these things so much differently. It'll really, really change the way you color things. I know it changed the way I color things. So I actually want to add a couple bit strands here. I feel like that's too white. Awesome. So there we go. There's some teal hair for you. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple little things here. I'm going to do a couple little tricks. So what we're going to use is we're going to use our C marker for his tooth. And I'm going to use the C01 and I'm just going to shade in this tooth to color a little bit around this tooth. Okay. Reason being is that cool gray against that warm gray is going to show very different colors. And then I'm going to use my colorless blender and just do a little touch inside of there so that his whole tooth isn't gray. So it looks white. Okay, so that just covers up that, that Memento Desert Sand. Then what I'm going to do is we're going to color his horn. We're going to go ahead and color it yellow like we did the other one. So we're going to take this Y38 and we're going to color his horn with this. So again, I'm just going to go down the back of this because this is the furthest away from the sun. I'm going to go across the top of his head because I feel like it would be in shadow. And then I'm just going to use this to trace these lines that are coming up the horn, the little spiral lines that show that it's twisty. Okay. Then I'm going to come in with my Y18 and we're just going to basically elongate these a little bit. We're going to shade them in some so that we can transition to that lighter color. Okay. Now I'm going to take this Y04 and we're just going to shade these in. And that desert sand is going to pull this color from the Y04 and it's going to turn itself yellow. That's what I like about it, is it kind of takes on the color of whatever you're using. So now we have this cute little unicorn horn. I also think with this guy, I'm going to go ahead and color the inside of his ear pink. So I'm going to take this RV52. We're going to color the inside of his ear. Okay. It's very subtle, but I think it adds something to it. And again, I'm going to take my colorless blender here and I'm just going to wash this out just ever so slightly. So it's not like in your face pink. All right, now we're gonna do these hooves. And with these hooves, I'm gonna do C again. I'm gonna use my C markers. I could use my W's, but I think I wanna make them stand out just a little bit. So I'm gonna start with this C3. That's in the light, so you can't see it. I'm gonna start with this C3. Oops, and then I knocked it over. And again, both caps off. And I'm going to actually just go over his whole entire hoof. Now I know this is weird because we're working with light and we're trying to make things look like they're lighter and darker, but watch what I'm gonna do with my colorless blender and it'll all make sense. So I'm just gonna go over all of his hoof. Just like that, and we're gonna go over this one. Just like that. Okay. So now his hooves are like this really dark gray. And then I'm gonna take my colorless blender again, and I'm just gonna add highlight to them. So I'm gonna go in here where I think the highlight would be, and with just the tip of this colorless blender, I'm gonna wash out where that highlight is gonna be. Because remember, we colored over that dark, that ink from the Memento, so there's still ink underneath there. So if I wash this color away just a little bit, you're gonna get a highlight there that has that Memento underneath it. All right, so now we get to color his eyes. And I think that we're gonna go for blue eyes. So I'm going to take our same blue blend that we used before. I'm trying to recycle these markers for you guys. So I have B99, and I'm gonna take this B99, oops, I'm gonna take both caps off because, man, I really, really don't want something bad to happen here. And I'm just gonna trace the very edge of his eye here. And we're gonna make this little part dark. I'm gonna do the same thing down here. And notice I'm taking my time, I'm being very, very careful, trying to get this as intricate as I possibly can, okay? I know he looks silly with just that, but we're gonna fix it. I have B95 now, and we're gonna take this B95 and we're gonna do the same thing. And ladies and gentlemen, right now, I'm literally like hugging my paper. I like to get really close to my coloring when I do this so that I can be really intricate. There we go. So if you see my big head in the camera frame, that's how you know. Then I'm gonna take this B91, this really light color, and I'm gonna fill this in and use it to kind of wash out the others. Blend them out together. Look at that. Now I'm gonna go back in with my super awesome multi-liner, and I'm gonna color in his pupil here. And notice I leave a little highlight because I feel like that adds dimension as well. So I do leave that little highlight in his eye. Okay, now I know that eyes are going to be bold, so I really like to outline my eyes. I know we're coloring with no lines here, but I think it's just adds something to it when you outline these eyes. And plus this little guy's a cartoon, so I feel like the outline really helps sell that. There we go. Now, just to add a little extra dimension to it, I'm gonna take this C1 and I'm gonna go right into his corner, right into the corner of his eye here, and I'm gonna add like a little round crescent shape. This just sells the fact that his eyeball is round and not flat. And then I take my colorless blender and I push that back in so that it's nice and smooth. I don't want to overdo it because I use that multi-liner there and I don't want that multi-liner to bleed. It shouldn't bleed, but every once in a while, if you really saturate your paper, you do. So I'm just making this nice and smooth. All right, there we go. there's our sweet little guy. So now I'm gonna come back in with our Jelly Roll pen. And of course we have to add glitter to his hair, right? So we're gonna add glitter in those same brush strokes that we always use for the hair. Same little tiny brush strokes. We're gonna go all the way down the length of his hair. And we're gonna keep going with the flow of the hair, just like we did before. And it's fine, you can go both directions. But we're just kind of adding more little strands of hair to this. And I'm gonna do the same thing with his tail. Because we know he has a glittery tail, right? I love these Jelly Roll pens. I think they're so much fun and they add so much to your finished project. We know he's a sparkly little guy. There we go. There's our little unicorn guy. So let me pick him up here so you can see him. Look at that. And we did him no lines and everything. Isn't that adorable? Oh gosh, he's so cute. So now I want to show you the difference side by side, if I can get them both in the frame, is see the difference between this cool gray and this warm gray? It's very subtle, but you can see that this has a very much of a cooler undertone, and this is very much warmer. It has more of a brown tone to it. So there you go. There's two little unicorns. I hope you guys really enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you guys really loved this coloring class. I did. I think it was loads of fun. I love coloring hair, like I said, and I think these little guys are just great to color hair with. So, I thank you guys for joining me. I thank you guys for supporting Sweet Sentiment. I thank our sponsors this month, CC Designs especially, for letting us use these adorable little critters for our coloring class. And I will see you guys all next month for another awesome coloring class. Toodles!